right, our next dish.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about another taste change that people experience is having a metallic taste. So this one is something that I actually recently had a patient come in and needing some tips around that. And so, some of the things to try with this, and again, it's experimenting, but trying meatless sources of protein. Okay, so baked beans or legumes, lentils, yogurt, eggs, hummus, peanut, or any other type of nut butter, right? There are so many options. And what's the reason for this? Well, the things that are like red meat, okay, tend to have higher amounts of iron in them, okay? And that can allude to more of a metallic taste. So you do want to steer clear, especially of red meats. But if you are going to have meat, poultry, or fish, you want to have it with a tart food. And these are things like lemon or lime juice, cranberry sauce, or pickles, right? Unless you have any mouth sores. But this can help manage that metallic taste. So we're going to take a look at kind of a recipe that could replace those meat sources of protein, so going meatless, and adding in some of those tart flavors to help. The other thing I just want to mention is to be careful with the kind of the utensils and cookware that you're using. So use plastic utensils, have chopsticks and glassware, or even cookingware instead of metal. So that other recipe that we were talking about with the chicken, right, having a cast iron pan, or even cooking it in a metallic pot might seep some of those metallic tastes into your food. So you do want to, again, make sure that the types of cookware that you're using isn't metal. But if you, let's say, have a bake sheet, you could always put parchment paper on it because that can kind of keep that barrier. All right, so Jer, tell us what our next recipe is.
Okay, actually, before I get into that, great point, Steph. And one thing I'll add to that is if you have a deeper dish like a cast iron pan that has like a lip to it, you can still use parchment. If you just crunch it up, run it under a little bit of water so it's nice and soft, and you can kind of tuck it into the pan in that same sort of chicken dish that I did. You can still use the cast iron, but now it's lined with the parchment. So you can use it in deeper dishes as well. Okay, so for this recipe, we're going to be making, obviously this is a protein alternative, and we wanted to do something that was like a snack, something that's smaller, something that you can make a big batch of, sort of eat when you need that little boost, and maybe you don't have the energy to cook or feel like cooking much at all. And what's lovely about this as well is it's a no-cook recipe. So we're just combining everything together. We don't have to turn anything on. We're not creating any extra aromas as well, right? Okay, so what we're going to be doing is making lemon, cashew, coconut protein bites. These came out really, really good, so I'm really, really happy with them. And we're using cashews for this, but this will actually work with any nut. Works really well with almonds, peanuts, pecans, walnuts. You can even use the peanut butter, like just the nut butter, almond butter, whatever, instead of the nuts as well. And we're using about a cup of cashews. So you would use almost a cup, about 3/4 of a cup, maybe a little bit more than that, of like peanut butter or almond butter in the recipe. Okay. So what we have here, again, cashews. We have about 1/2 cup of oats. Any flaked oat will work. And then 1/2 cup of coconut. This is unsweetened dried coconut. Okay. And that's going to go into, I'm actually going to bring the camera over. I made some earlier. That's going to go into our food processor. You can do this in a blender as well if it has a wide base. Otherwise, it might be a little more challenging because there's not a lot of liquid in here. So the food processor, because it has a wide base, really, really helps to mix everything. So we have those. We're going to add the zest of a lemon. So again, we want that lemon flavor, but if the acidity is too bothersome, then just go for the zest. Now, when we're using the zest, obviously you're going to wash your citrus really, really well. This is also one of the only cases where I would say if you're going to be using a lot of zest, you can maybe get the organic lemons because they tend not to have any of that wax on the outside. So if I'm using a lot of zest, then I'll get the organic ones. All right. So we have all of that. So that lemon flavor, it's going to add a big, big punch. Now, a piece of cilantro went in there too. That's okay. If you are okay with lemon juice, the acidity from lemon juice, and you want like an even bigger lemon punch, then what I do is I add just a little bit, like about a tablespoon of fresh lemon juice in there as well. But again, this is optional. You can just try not to get any seeds. Okay, so a little bit of lemon juice in there. And we're going to add some maple syrup for sweetness. Not too much. So this is only about 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. So it really isn't a lot, but it's going to sweeten this entire batch here. And this is optional, but I love the use of chia seeds. It just gives it some really nice texture, and then there's more protein in here too, right, Steph?
Yeah, protein and fiber, right? So again, we're kind of working around this idea of a meatless food or recipe that we're creating. Now, obviously, we're not saying that this replaces chicken, right? If that's something that you like, or fish or eggs, although obviously it can because it is a protein. But again, we're talking, like the big encouragement here is about experimenting with different foods and flavors. Just because taste changes can be so frustrating and cumbersome that patience and, create like opening your different options is really useful in helping the management of the taste changes that you're experiencing.
Awesome. Okay. And then the last thing too, if you wanted to boost the protein even more, is you can add a little bit of protein powder, like a skim milk powder or something like that, right, Steph?
Yes. And this is such a great idea. Again, for those who are not meeting their food requirements, their nutritional requirements through food, because of taste changes, you really want to make every bite count. So you might not be eating as much food as you want, especially with taste changes. Like you don't want to be sitting there chewing, right? You want to have softer foods. You want to have every bite, make it count. And yes, a protein powder is an excellent thing to add. I'm not saying everybody needs one. It just really depends on what you're currently getting. So it is important to stop to talk with your doctor or dietitian about, whether it's right for you. Usually we recommend protein that's based, like has a whey protein, because this one is best absorbed in the body, and it helps replenish and restore, heal, your muscles. But other sources are good too. So I know that the one that Jared was using is a pea-based protein. So for those who are looking for more of a vegan-based source, so a plant-based source of protein, great option as well.
Awesome. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now we're gonna take this for a spin. Just make sure that it's on properly. You can already see it's. So read the instruction manual for your first. There we go. All right. It might get a little loud, so I know Nat's spinning the dials on the other end. I don't know if you want to tune it down.
So yeah, this takes not so much time to get all together and ready.
And so I swapped it for just a second, just to show you what we're looking for. So you can see how it's starting to cluster a little bit, which is great. I want to go a little bit more until it almost starts to form a ball, almost like a little snowball will start to form there. So I'll go a little bit more.
All right.
So you can see here, if I take a little bit of it and I sort of crunch it, it holds its shape. Did it freeze over there?
That's great. Yeah.
There we go. So that's exactly what we want. Now, a couple things you can do at this point. If you want to make it really easy, get one of these little ice cream scoops, and you can scoop out these little balls and put them onto your parchment. So a little bit of that, and then makes it really, really quick and easy.
Okay.
Now, to Steph's point, if you do have the metallic taste, you want to try to avoid any of these metallic utensils, right? So even things like wood, I have a bunch of these little wooden spatulas and spoons. These things are fantastic, really, really great. You know, they last forever. They're pretty cheap, and you can use things like this, you know, to remove it, obviously, from the dish.
Yeah. And I guess like also the blade might cause some trouble too. So in which case, like I've done these kind of energy bowls in the past. I don't actually have a blender or even a Cuisinart. So what I found useful is in this case, I would probably use like a nut butter and kind of mash it and cut it within like in a kind of a Pyrex pan or something. And I know that works too as well.
No, that's a fantastic point. Absolutely. I mean, that is really, you know, that is really one of the only things you really want to break down. So if you already have the nut butter that's already broken down for you, just mix it in the bowl and then just roll it by hand. And so I've done a few ahead of time.
Right.
And you can, so this is what they look like kind of on their own.
Yum.
Really, really tasty. And they have those little chia seed speckles.
And you could also see the zest. It's really great.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you want, you can even roll them in a little bit of coconut after, if you want to make them a little fancier. But these things are great. Really, really tasty. They give you that little boost. And what I love about them is that they freeze exceptionally well. So you can make a batch of these, put them in the freezer like this until they're frozen solid, and then transfer them to a freezer bag. And what do you know? And we have finished them. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Steph, for joining me.
Thank you.